Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the 2016 Remembrance Day Last Post ceremony, which marks the 75th anniversary of the opening of the Australian War Memorial. My name's Richard Cruz. As part of our 75th anniversary commemorations, we're honoured to welcome Vice Admiral Ray Griggs, Vice Chief of the Defence Force. We will also hear a special performance of Highland Cathedral by the Canberra Burns Club Pipe Band. We are pleased to acknowledge the Chairman, current and former, and members of the Council of the Australian War Memorial, who are joining us for the ceremony, including Rear Admiral Brett Wolski, representing the Chief of Navy, Major General Rick Burr, representing Chief of Army, Air Chief Marshal Leo Davies, Chief of Air Force, and Corporal Dan Kieran and Mr Ben Roberts-Smith, recipients of the Victoria Cross for Australia, and Mrs Emma Roberts-Smith, patron of the Friends of the Memorial. We also acknowledge Mr Peter Everly, representing the National President of the Returned and Services League of Australia. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. Could I ask you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem?
NFL Party 10, John. NFL Party present. Up.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is earth, I see. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, our beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
NFL Party shoulder. Up. NFL Party order. Up.
If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. The Roll of Honour lists the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. Normally at this ceremony, we tell the story behind just one of those names. But each year, on Remembrance Day, we commemorate all service and sacrifice by reading the eulogy of the unknown Australian soldier. The eulogy was first delivered on this day in 1993 by then Prime Minister Paul Keating on the occasion of the interment at the Australian War Memorial's Hall of Memory. To mark the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the opening of the Australian War Memorial, we now welcome representatives from the Canberra Burns Club Pipe Band, who will play Highland Cathedral. And now we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
We do not know this Australian's name, and we never will. We do not know his rank or battalion. We do not know where he was born, nor precisely how and when he died. We do not know where in Australia he made his home, or when he left it for the battlefields of Europe. We do not know his age or circumstances, whether he was from the city or the bush, what occupation he left to become a soldier, what religion, if he had a religion, if he was married or single. We do not know who loved him or whom he loved. If he had children, we do not know who they are. His family is lost to us as he was lost to them. We will never know who this Australian was, yet he has always been among those whom we have honoured. We do know that he was one of the 45,000 Australians who died on the Western Front, one of the 416,000 Australians who volunteered for service in the First World War, one of the 324,000 Australians who served overseas in that war, and one of the 60,000 Australians who died on foreign soil, and one of the 100,000 Australians who have died in wars over this last century. He is all of them, and he is one of us. This Australia and the Australia that he knew are like foreign countries. The tide of events since he died has been so dramatic, so vast and all-consuming, a world has been created beyond the reach of his imagination. He may have been one of those who believed that the Great War would be an adventure too grand to miss. He may have felt that he could never live down the shame of not going. But the chances are he went for no other reason than that he believed it was his duty, a duty he owed his country and his king. Because the Great War was a mad, brutal, awful struggle, distinguished more often than not by military and political incompetence. Because the waste of human life was so terrible that some said victory was scarcely discernible from defeat. And because the war, which was supposed to end all wars, in fact sowed the seeds of a second, even more terrible war, we might think that this unknown soldier died in vain. But in honouring our war dead, as we always have, we declare that this is not true. For out of the war came a lesson which transcended the horror and tragedy and the inexcusable folly. It was a lesson about ordinary people. And the lesson was that they were not ordinary. On all sides, they were the heroes of that war. Not the generals or the politicians, but the soldiers and sailors and nurses, those who taught us to endure hardship, to show courage, to be bold as well as resilient, to believe in ourselves, to stick together. The unknown Australian soldier was one of those who, by his deeds, proved that real nobility and grandeur belongs not to empires and to nations, but to the people on whom they, in the last resort, always depend. That is surely at the heart of the Anzac story, the Australian legend which emerged from the war. It is a legend not of sweeping military victories, so much as triumphs against the odds, of courage and ingenuity in adversity. It is a legend of free and independent spirits whose discipline derived less from military formalities and customs than from the bonds of mateship and the demands of necessity. It is a democratic tradition, the tradition in which Australians have gone to war ever since. This unknown Australian is not interred here to glorify war over peace, or to assert a soldier's character over a civilian, or one race, or one nation, or one religion above another, or men above women, or the war in which he fought and died above any other war, or one generation above any that has been or will come later. The unknown soldier honours the memory of all those men and women who laid down their lives for Australia. His tomb is a reminder of what we have lost in war and what we have gained. we have lost more than 100,000 lives, and with them all their love of this country and all their hope and energy. But we have gained a legend, a story of bravery and sacrifice, and with it, a deeper faith in ourselves and our democracy, and a deeper understanding of what it means to be Australian. It is not too much to hope, therefore, that this unknown Australian soldier might continue to serve his country. He might enshrine a nation's love of peace and remind us that in the sacrifice of the men and women whose names are recorded here, there is faith enough for all of us.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Party present. Party shoulder.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Party words. Turn. Party quick. March.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the 2016 Remembrance Day Last Post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you a very good evening. Thank you.